Welcome in, guys, to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video. This is your host, Just Call Me Tex. And just like I brought you my top 10 S-Class characters for the month of July, we're going to go ahead and continue that trend with my top 5 worst characters, S-Class characters in the Walking Dead Road to Survival. I mean, just the way the characters are built does not provide them with having longevity in the S-Class era. When you look at an S-Class character, a S-Class character needs to be able to do multiple things at one time. That's what makes them really viable. So let me go ahead and give you an example before we get into the list of what I mean by an S-Class character needs to do multiple things at one time, okay? Not one time, but multiple things. So let's look at Princess, for example, and if you know me, if you've been watching any of my videos, you know I'm really big on Princess, and there's a reason why. So number one, Princess does Berserk, okay? Whenever this character takes damage, they gain 20% attack until the end of their next turn, in addition to an existing attack increase, including prior activation of this skill, right? So that's one thing. Number two, Princess normalizes and taunts, and she gives herself AP gain. Alrighty? Now, normalize is very effective because it stops players from doing their active skill. She also taunts, so that'll stop a player from doing their AP skill, right? On top of that, she does 1,000 damage to a line of enemies. If she's on defense, she gains 50% bonus. If she does 1,000% damage to a line of enemies, she gains 50% bonus HP. And if she's on defense, she gets plus 30 defense for 3 turns. That's not it. When you go over to her weapon, well, I have her weapon modified with the double attack, but in the beginning, when being attacked, she got an additional 75% attack for 2 turns, which is absolutely crazy on top of the Berserk and everything. So when you look at these S-Class characters, they need to be able to do multiple things. Another example, let's go ahead and look at Pete's here. So for example, Pete is elite. So all ranged teammates get 30% HP, 30% defense, and a huge bonus to AP when taking damage on defense. Now, why is this good? This is good because defensive teams already get an extra little pinch of bonus AP every time they attack, regardless. Okay, that's just how the game is set up. Now, with Pete as lead, this is going to only increase that AP gain that you actually get. Okay? Secondly, turn 2, all teammates recover from main and regain 40% HP. This character gains 35% AP. That's another thing. Now, here's where his kit goes really well. Revives 2 teammates with 60% of their max health. Those teammates get Guardian Shield. This character and up to one other teammate get 60% bonus HP and get Guardian Shield. Absolute beast. This is what I'm talking about how S-Class characters need to be built. Absolutely amazing. Now, when we go over to his weapon, obviously I added pain spread on there and a couple of other things with upgrading his weapon. But his base weapon was, at the beginning of each wave, all teammates gain 20% HP. So Pete is another all-around monster when it comes to being able to build a really good defensive team around him. It's really good, right? That's how a character's kit need to be in the S-Class era. One thing is not going to do it. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get to my top 5 worst S-Class characters, okay? In no particular order, but we're just gonna start, okay? The very first character that I have on this list is Malcolm, okay? You were able to get Malcolm from, I believe it was the you were able to get Malcolm from, he was part of Survivors Club, right? But Malcolm is supposed to be a offensive leader for melee teams, but when you look at his kit is not conducive to be a great leader. So let's go ahead and look at that. Let's look at Malcolm's kit. We go over here to Malcolm, and we're just going to look at Malcolm's kit, okay? All right, first, all melee teammates get 40% attack and a huge bonus to AP when attacking, okay? That's pretty basic. All melee leads pretty much give this attack bonus. Now, let's go ahead and look at the rest of his kit. Okay, now, recover, normalize, and AP gain. First of all, his active is a turn 3 active. Turn 3. In the S-Class era that we in, most of the time, turn 3, your team's either dead or most of them are dying. Because a lot of people have turn 2, turn 1, turn 3 attack teams. So this almost renders his active skill to recover from normalize useless. And secondly, to only give up to 20% AP to 2 teammates is absolutely terrible. As a matter of fact, God, what's his name? His name just slipped my mind. I was just about to. Matter of fact, I'll go to him. I think it's Secretary Gao, right? When you look at Secretary Gao, and you look at what Secretary Gao's active does. Okay, so turn 2, mind you, this is turn 2, so it's a turn earlier. He deals 650 burn damage for 2 turns to a line of enemies. So that's an extra 1,300 damage if they're not protecting against burn. And up to 2 teammates gain 60% AP. This is what you would need as an active skill. Number 1, it needs to be before turn 3, turn 1, turn 2, max. And secondly, it needs to be able to add to the team. So what you see is Malcolm's active doesn't do any of that. That 40% you can get from any leader. Ivanova's a really good melee leader. And I'll show you the difference in the kits and why it's important. Now, check this out. His rush, 400 damage to a line of enemies. In the S-Class era, 400 damage is absolutely nothing. Those enemies get disarmed and dazed for 2 turns. Now, the disarm and daze is good, but what you want to think of is if he's not built to be like a turn 1, turn 2, it's like rush, like you need to have 8% AP weapons in his hand, things of that nature. He needs to be crafted really, really well in order to even make him partly viable. So with that being said, if you don't have those AP weapons, if you don't have RF, if you don't have a good command that goes well with him, then the 40% you're getting is absolutely useless. It's not gonna help, because more than likely, with how people are building these attack defensive teams, you're gonna be dead anyway turn 3 with Malcolm as your lead. So this is why I think that he is one of the worst characters. His kit needs to be rebuilt. Now, I will not just say why he's bad without offering suggestions. So let me go ahead and give some suggestions. Number 1, this active skill needs to be turn 2. Why? Because Princess goes off turn 2. And if he could use this active skill turn 2, this will help with the team. That's another one. Secondly, it needs to be more than one other character. This needs to be 2 or 3 characters. So therefore you can be able to combat Princess, right? And I will also boost up the AP from 20 to 60%. That will make him more viable, okay? Now, damage to a line of enemies, that is okay. Now, the disarm and the daze for 2 turns, okay, we can keep that if you want to keep that, right? But the AP needs to be lower. It needs to be 66 AP. Because he needs to go off quickly so that he can benefit his other heavy hitters, such as like Arv or somebody of that nature. Or if you have the new Alpha, right? Like, that's how he needs to be built in order for this to be able to work. So that's Malcolm. Malcolm is definitely one of the worst leads. His kits need to be rebuilt. Now, one of the next ones that I'm going to put up here was one of the first S-Class characters that we were able to get. And this S-Class character is none other than Kapoor. Kapoor is absolutely terrible. He serves no purpose on the team. His kit is definitely not built for the S-Class era. And this is something that definitely needs to change. So let me go ahead and show you what Kapoor looks like right now. So if we go to Kapoor, Kapoor does dexterity. Kind of know what this is. If he takes damage, he can kind of like reduce that damage for a little bit, but that's fine. You know, and it seems nice, but Priya just shreds him anyway. When I have Princess, after normalize, and we go ahead and rush Princess, she just shreds that line anyway. So, secondly, his heal that he have here, up to 2 teammates will gain 75% health. But I believe this is a turn 3 active, which in the S-Class era is too much. This needs to be a turn 2. It needs to be something that comes up pretty quickly, you know, and it needs to add something else, not just healing your teammates, but giving them an overshield or a guardian shield or something of that nature to make him more viable. Secondly, 1500 main damage is a joke. In the S-Class era, when you got people that has 10,000 health, 1500 main damage is an absolute joke. Whether you're using him on offense or defense, it's still a joke. Because by the time he gets to do his rush, he's already dead. And then the teammates get 80% defense for 2 turns. You know, maybe we could fix that to where he does 4,000 main damage to a line of enemies, and they get 80% defense for 4 turns or 5 turns. Something that makes him more viable so that people who are not pay to play can be able to stick him into a team to be able to help them survive longer in cross-region war or regional war or onslaught, things of that nature, you know. But as his kit stands right now, he's definitely one of the worst. So Kapoor is up there on my top list of worst characters in Road to Survival. So we have Kapoor, we have Malcolm, okay, and next we're gonna have Glen. Okay, I'm gonna tell you why I have Glen up here. With Princess being who she is in this era, and with Priya being who she is, it's just really hard for red characters in general because they do so much damage. It's hard to keep them on there, but keep them alive. But it's because of how his kit is built that we have an issue here. So let's go ahead and go to Glen. We're gonna go to Glen and go to his kit. Let's look here. Okay, well, he has neutralize. Neutralize is actually a good ability, right? When they have more than 80% AP, this will, you know, impair them for 1 turn. So that's actually pretty good. Okay, now this active is terrible. Only 1 person gets disarmed with this active. That's a problem. Number 2, disarm is not really gonna help when Glen is on a defensive team, because you don't have high attackers on that defensive team. You will have to build them a very specific way in order for this disarm to actually be even viable. Secondly, this needs to be more than 1 person. This needs to be the whole team gets disarmed, something of that nature, so that his kit is more viable in the S-Class era, right? So that's secondly. Thirdly, now this is a 76 AP cost gain here. 76 AP cost here. 1 enemy gets dazed, and it's gonna turn into 2 enemies get dazed for 2 turns. And because if we go ahead and level that up, it's gonna turn into so we can see it here. Two enemies get dazed for 2 turns, and all enemies get negative 40 AP. Now, if you are using Glen on your team, you don't want to level up his active. You just want to level up his rush. That's the mistake I made. You just because you don't want him wasting a turn doing disarm. You literally want him going off to do that -40 AP because it's going to give you an extra turn on defense, right? But the thing is that when you have a turn 2 attack team with Priya or a turn 1 attack team with Priya and Princess, that's a wrap. It's over. It's really hard to get past or to be able to use his kit. It's just not viable in this era right now. So that's the third character that I think needs to be reworked, and he has no purpose and it just doesn't have a good fit in the game. Now, number 4, okay? Number 4 is gonna be Eugene. I don't know what was being thought when this was being made, but Eugene is terrible. His just how his kit is built, he's just not viable enough to be able to put him on a team. He doesn't have a good fit. So let's look at Eugene's kit. First, he has Indomitable, okay? So gain 30% defense until the start, and he's going to take less damage when he's being hit. Now, let's look here. This is turn 3. Why would you give him a turn 3 active skill in the S-Class era when you have Princess, when you have Priya, when you have RF, when you have these teams you can build one turn attack teams? This makes absolutely no sense. So already with his active skill, even though it helps with debilitating effects and gets elusive for 1 turn, the problem is it's turn 3. So by that turn, everybody's dead. If you're using him on defense, they're dead. It's not gonna work. So that needs to be reworked. Okay, maybe this needs to be a turn 2, right? And everybody gets elusive for 3 turns. There's a way to make the characters viable in the era. So I think that's what needs to happen with that active skill. Now, when we look at the adrenaline rush, okay, it's 58 APs, pretty fast, but here's what happened. You deal damage to 1 enemy for 400% damage. Up to 5 enemies get impaired for 1 turn. This character gets 75 defense for 3 turns. Now, here's what I would suggest. My suggestion is up to 5 characters get impaired for 3 turns. This character and 2 other teammates get 75% defense for 3 turns. You have to make it viable so that he can be able to fit into a team. Otherwise, like I said, this is not good. Now, he can be able to carry a stun weapon. You can be able to put a different type of weapon in his hand, but it's just his all-around kit does not fit within the S-Class era, especially when you got guys like the Gentleman that will one-shot Eugene, no questions asked, okay? So that is another character that needs to definitely be reworked so that he can fit better within the scheme of the game. Now, for my last character that's going to be on this top list of characters that are the worst in the game and that I personally think that needs to be reworked, okay? Now, this character was good at a very crucial point in the game, in the beginning of the S-Class era, but their kit definitely needs to be reworked so that they can be viable now, later on into the S-Class era, and that's none other than Kristin. Okay, Kristin used to be a very viable source, very viable fighter, but now she's been relegated to the D team or the Z team because her kit just does not fit within the realm of what it is that we're trying to do now. So if we go ahead and look at her, let's go ahead and look at Kristin's kit, okay? And you'll see what I'm talking about. So for example, if I go to Kristin, all right, now she does waste not. This specialist kills an enemy with an attack or adrenaline rush and any of that excess damage is dealt to one adjacent target. Okay, perfect. Now, on turn 2, this character gets focus for 3 turns, and up to 2 enemies get -40 defense for 2 turns. Okay, now she does have a turn 2 active. It is focus. Focus is pretty powerful. All right, but with players in a game like Princess and players in a game like Priya, and then you have players like Mercer, you know, you have some very viable offensive players. And if you're using her on defense, because I've seen her on defense, and if you're using her on offense, you know, that's a little bit of a different story. But either way, I think this focus and defensive down kit needs to be reworked so that she can be able to help the team. So for example, up to 2 enemies get -40 defense for 2 turns. I think that should be 4 enemies. I think that will help the team better. This character and one other character should get focus for 3 turns. So that will make it more viable. Now, her attack, check this out. She deals 750 damage to 1 enemy. Up to 2 other enemies get 50% slow and 100% heal reduction for 3 turns. Okay, now this is a pretty fast rush, but the problem with this rush is how players are built. She's not killing someone unless they're like a green character, but other than that, if she's going against a heavily stacked defensive character, or somebody that's built like a tank, or you know, like say for like if you know, like you got her on your team and she's going up against Frost, or she's going up against, I mean, Aaron or something of that nature, she's gonna be ineffective because she's not killing them with how tanky these people are built with the mods and things of that nature. So I just personally think that she needs to be reworked. I think that she could do a nice little reworking that deal 750 damage, could be 1,000 damage to a line of enemies, and then from up to 2 people. I think if you did it to up to 3 or possibly 4, I think that will make her more viable in this S-Class era, because what happens is if she doesn't kill somebody, right, with the waist knot, then these other things go into effect with the team to be able to help out. So that's just my suggestion when it comes to Kristin. These are my top 5. So these are the top 5 players that I think that definitely needs to be reworked, and they are the worst characters. Now, your top 5 may differ than mine. You may have a different outlook on the game than I do, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just giving you my rankings of how I think these characters do not have a viable position in the game. Now, if you think they may have a viable position, it may be something that you see that I didn't see, definitely put that in the comments. You know, I'm always looking to be able to learn, to grow, love the game, love the community. So this is your boy Just Call Me Tex. If you like videos like these, please like and subscribe, leave a comment down below. And this, once again, this is Just Call Me Tex. Peace.